Well, let's get started. Straight through Cameron, Manwaring, and Swan Valley roads first on the agenda. So, you want to tell us what you're hoping, what you want, what you need?
For sure.
Okay.
I think start out, it's a bit of a bummer that we honestly even have to be here. And end result for today of what I would just hope is that we gotta have a better relationship with county and in terms of, I think overall, but in road stuff, and I don't know, I don't have a lot of the context and history of what precedes, and I don't know what some of those interactions or relationships or things that happened. But I can just speak only for myself is that I've tried to make every effort.
I'm sorry, Cameron, if you
Yep.
introduce yourself for the.
Go ahead. I'm
record and your
Cameron
address.
Manwaring, Mayor, Swan Valley, Idaho.
Address.
And I honestly have tried to make every effort to get to know the people in the county.
What's
We've had
What's your
multiple-
address, Cameron?
Address,
Yes.
180 Wapiti
Record.
Run, Swan Valley,
Thank
Idaho,
you.
83449.
Sorry, I would interrupt you.
You're good. I've been in since January 2024. And we've had multiple opportunities to meet and discuss some of these different projects. And there was some pretty new and novel, Swan Valley, we're 340 something people estimated in terms of year-round residents, kind of a small blip on the map. And there's even been questions at times of why does Swan Valley and Irwin exist when there's so much county presence and county responsibility? And Jeff can speak to some of that, but a lot of it is we do try to alleviate some of the responsibility of the county. The county's not as physically close and present. And so for things like inspections and permitting and doing things like that management, we had a roads and bridge project with bridges. And I was physically out there every couple of weeks and doing monthly meetings, making sure that stuff was going well. And so we really do try within our limited ability to support as much as we can. The little bit of context, most everyone here knows some of this, and so I'll try and be succinct. But when I came in just prior there, I think it was October or so, before I was put in, Lance had a chance to come out and present to City Council about the ability to improve Stoltenberg Lane. And sure, yeah, whoever would like a copy, I think everyone kind of knows some of it, but you guys can too. Stoltenberg Lane, it's an old ranch road essentially that then was deeded over to the county as a county road, probably 100 years ago or whenever that deed was. And when it was just a ranch road, it's fine. It's got some potholes here and there and it's got some high water tables. When they let the river go too, though, it also, those water tables go up and the condition of the road is significantly deteriorated. And that's even before we talk about Grand Valley and the dam. That road before had really consistent river flow and it was pretty predictable. But since they have the outflows with the dam, that affects the water table quite a bit depending on how they do it. And I've talked with some of the private contractors who developed some of these private subdivisions adjacent to, and there's a direct correlation that when those water tables go up, that's when a lot of the problems happen with, moisture and things like that. So county and us both agreed that, to really improve this road in a way that it doesn't have to be constantly maintained, it needs to be really kind of redone in some ways. We got to go back down to lower depths and do things like geotextiles. We got to get a really good base so that then we can do some sort of a hard top. And we had some great success on Chapel Road with hard top. And as a city, we paid for that project and contributed to it. It's a little bit different of a beast. And so twofold end results today of what I would hope for is one, a little bit better understanding on what is that relationship between City of Swan Valley and the county when it comes to roads. And then specifically as it regards Stoltenberg Lane. one thing I might turn over to Jeff for a second is just in terms of kind of some of this, but one other thing I'll pass out here. Stoltenberg Lane, it also is unique in our city in that it's a single access. There's not two accessible routes to reach residents or any of the properties down Stoltenberg Lane. And so that does provide, in addition to some of the maintenance of that road, it provides some safety and emergency services concerns. And I'll pass out a few of these for a few of the people here. We can get more copies if you guys need to, but we have from Sheriff Holtz and then Travis Crystal, the fire chief. They full express their support and concern in terms of the just the maintenance of that road, and that it really does. We have fire trucks that on some of those high water table days where we get spring runoff and the roads are soft, there's fire trucks that cannot make it down there. And it extremely limits the safety and the ability to provide fire services. As well as it can reduce emergency services times for sheriff's department, medical services and other things. And so of all the projects, I honestly, I love Swan Valley because it has potholes, and I say potholes prevent neighbors, and I like that. I think a lot of people that live there like that about it, but when it's truly a safety concern, that's when I can get behind it. And we've had residents asking for a long time to be able to do this, way preceding me. And then that gets down to this, another unique thing about Stoltenberg. When we first met, I was just simply trying to get up to speed on where we were at with stuff. We'd had some questions about material and asked for some estimates on cost about doing material locally with a local crush versus having to haul it across Antelope Flats with trucks and bring that material from Idaho Falls. And so that's kind of where it started out, we were trying to get a better understanding or maybe a budget on what that would be cost difference. And as I started doing some of the due diligence on Stoltenberg, it was one road that's unique to the entire valley for Swan specifically, where all those other roads have kind of a right of way access. There's Swan Valley residents on one side and the other, and their property boundary through kind of easement meets in the middle of that road. Stoltenberg specifically was a county road, and that had been an exact parcel. It's a long, narrow, noodle-like looking parcel owned by the county. And I know when we brought that up to the attention, it was just a couple weeks later that we received a quitclaim deed, giving ownership of that parcel to the city. And that's part of what we'll talk about. But regardless of a quitclaim deed, it doesn't take away the accountability of that road from the city or from the county in terms of maintaining that road. And so we do have some county agreements in place where, in terms of things outside of regular maintenance, like hard top and things, we've agreed with prior agreements that that is something that the city would support and fund. And currently we do that. We've given over hundreds of thousands of funds that we receive from the states over the years in roads and bridge directly to the county. And that's by choice because we don't have a roads crew. We don't maintain that ourselves. And so without question, and honestly, with very little accountability, we hand over 100% of those costs. And so twofold, there's kind of a relationship thing there in terms of when we contract with the sheriff's department, if there's an emergency in the valley, regardless of an agreement with the city, the sheriff's department shows up to that emergency. Now we do contract with them additionally to have some additional support. And during the summer months, we've contracted to have a more full-time presence. Now, similar here is that we've opted to have an agreement with the county and the city to support and financially support and really carry the lion's share of any of those improvements and projects. But it doesn't abdicate the county's responsibility from those. And so maybe just on Jeff on that, if you speak to one, that Stoltenberg parcel, but also just sure Jeff is our legal counsel. Again, we're a mayor part-time, we're a city clerk part-time, and a planning and zoning part-time. We're a small little ragtag crew doing pretty much everything for the city. And so we don't have public works, we don't have, roads and bridges, we don't have some of that infrastructure. The volunteer is a fire department's volunteer. We are a very, very small, we're 0.2% of the population of Bonneville County. And so that's how we operate. And anyways, back over to you, Jeff. But
Okay,
so
Thank you.
specifically on the Stoltenberg first, but
I'm Jeff Schroeder. I'm the city attorney for Swan Valley. I work for a firm called it used to be called Moore Smith Buxton and Turk. Stephanie Bonney from Idaho Falls originally was Swan Valley's attorney, also Irwin's, some other small cities. So from a legal standpoint, the city of Swan Valley is kind of an odd city out in Bonneville County, in that it is a city that does not have a functioning street department. That puts it in a different status than other cities that Bonneville County deals with, in that the roads and streets within the city of Swan Valley are the responsibility of the county or the highway district that covers it, because the city does not have a functioning road department. So those, it was puzzling to get, without any other communication, a quitclaim deed that handed over. It's 1/2 mile of Stoltenberg Lane. This portion of the road from here to here is a mile long roughly until you get to that gate. This is 160 rods, which is 1/2 of a mile according to the legal description. That was dedicated to the county for the purposes of a public highway. From a legal standpoint, shifting ownership of that parcel to the city makes no difference as to who's ultimately responsible for the maintenance of that road. There's been multiple litigation between a city, and a very notorious litigation between the city of Sandpoint and an independent highway district in northern Idaho. No less than 4 trips to the Supreme Court about agreements about a city that did not have a functioning street department, got into a contract with a highway district, turned over property tax funds that they had levied for their street department, got into an agreement. The Supreme Court ultimately invalidated that agreement because it wasn't done pursuant to a joint powers agreement. The city then decided to stand up a street department. They had an agreement with the highway district, that the highway district would turn over all their funds. All of that was invalidated, but it's pretty clear as to who ultimately has the responsibility for the roadways. Now, that simply means that it goes into the county's, ultimate prioritization list, as we've seen in some communication. And that's clear and that's fair. I represent quite a number of cities who also don't have street departments. I think maybe 3 or 4. The bulk of them do, but it's basically just, okay, what can we get? So what's been going on here is we have an agreement that was inked in like 2018 or maybe redone for the city to go ahead and turn over all of the road and bridge revenue sharing money that it gets to Bonneville County's road department. And then there's an agreement for a certain number of lane miles, a certain amount of snow plowing and this sort of thing. Improvements to roads, I think, in that agreement are excluded. And so what the city has been, I think, intending to or trying to do is to partner with, over and above the amount of money that's handed over for the regular maintenance agreement, to participate in what the city believes, and apparently the fire chief and sheriff believe, are necessary improvements to this road. But handing we didn't get any communication, just the quitclaim deed saying, hey, it's your parcel now. But it essentially doesn't, it alters nothing about the legal status of the road. It's my opinion, of course, that neither entity could abandon the road or vacate it or close it, because everybody has to use it. So it doesn't give us and any authority to do that. So that, anyway, that's just kind of the legal framework that we're operating in. Is the city's not obligated to hand over those road and bridge funds. The city could contract with another entity, or the city could hire its own road department and start one. I don't think it intends to. To the mayor's point about I've heard this brought up before with folks I've dealt with, why are you even a city? What do you do? I think one of the more important things that Swan Valley does that I've had to expend a lot of time on is they exercise a planning and zoning function and their police power. Their police power to control nuisances. And they do that through the authority of a city under Title 50, and it's constitutionally derived police power to pass zoning ordinances and a comprehensive plan. And that relieves the county of the responsibility of having to navigate those fights, and many of them are in fact fights. You're not having to go in and file the lawsuits to clean up junkyards and that sort of thing. So the city does exist for its police power. The breadth of that, they do some park functions, they do some other things. The city also, both cities, Irwin and Swan Valley, have passed and enacted local option resort city tax. So they tax liquor by the drink and Airbnbs, and this has provided the additional funding for the city to be able to exercise some of these police powers and build a fund to do road improvements and sidewalk and park improvements. So the citizens of both of these cities have voted with a 60% margin to enact a tax, and these have provided a substantial amount of revenue for both cities. I won't speak to Irwin's, but in order to exercise their city functions. And so I think, unless there's any questions, that's all I've got on that, Mr. Mayor.
So the last thing I'll say, and then turn over to any questions that anyone has, but just end of the day, specifically for Stoltenberg, if we had twofold things. While I personally, like I said, I don't care too much to have dirt roads versus paved. I like dirt roads. But it does Stoltenberg specifically, and we've had fire district and sheriff's department and others that agree that it is a safety concern. And it does need to be prioritized. And so it would be our hope to support the county in being able to improve that road. The county is responsible for that maintenance either way. And so it'll reduce costs and time in the long run if that road is improved. And then second, I'd love to have a better relationship in terms of the city and the county on working on these things. I feel like there's been lack of communication, and again, where we just randomly get a quick claim deed, or we get a letter saying that we're not gonna work on the road, or, we wanna have a good relationship, and we want that to be good long-term, and so, you tell us, what does that look like, and what needs to happen for that to be a better thing? So,
Well, I have a couple of questions. First of all, I'm assuming that the road problems are because of these subdivisions and that are relatively new. Is that correct or not?
the road problems, they exist regardless because of those water tables. They're definitely exacerbated, based on increased building, and probably in some of these subdivisions. In fact, even this parcel here, you can see we're a random map in Swan Valley and Irwin where there's so many county city. This right here, those residents in that property is county. And the only access to those county residents is Stoltenberg Lane. Regardless, that's this one kind of up near the front. But yeah, it's really more the geography and the nature of it that affects that road. And then it's exacerbated by more vehicles. So yes.
When these subdivisions were built here,
Mhm.
was county planning and zoning involved in that, or did you guys did that?
I don't know, but they probably should be.
Right,
Because
usually, correct me if I'm wrong, Austin, but we would not allow one-way access with subdivisions like this. So this is a problem that was created, it sounds like, not by you.
I think it's about 30 years ago when some of those were put in. And so, yes, not by me, but regardless, we agree. And that's where part of some of this collaboration is that we don't have a lot of good communication going back and forth. And so there has been, I think, things that have just kind of slid through the cracks over the years on both sides. And we agree. I mean, I would love to have the county, whenever we have a subdivision application or something, to take a look at that. We've actually just, with the fire district, we're updating some of our zoning ordinances and subdivision ordinances to have a piece in there where the fire district reviews some of that according to fire suppression.
Because
So,
this problem is going to, I mean, Swan Valley's growing.
Yep.
There's no question about that, so. I mean, I certainly don't want a problem in the future where Swan Valley, the city, is approving zoning applications that then result in costs and problems for Bonneville
Agreed.
County.
Agreed, super agreed.
I think a big part of that is we probably need to work with the city, and in fact, we have to before January of 26 on updating our area of impact agreement, which would outline how some of those things work and how we work together on those applications and developments. So that's probably something we need to start.
Agreed. And we'll never, the thing is, we'll never be big, you know, right now, well, you,
I'm older than you are. The difference between Swan Valley when I was a kid,
I
and
know.
Swan Valley now is big,
in the last 5 years, we probably doubled.
right?
So I agree with that, but we're about 346 residents. And if you look at every single residential lot that currently is platted and exists. And then with our 5 acres, we went to the 5 acre minimum subdividing. A year ago, year and a half ago. We have about 500 acres. So give or take, that's not platted yet. And if you accounted for an average of about 3 residents per household, which is high, we actually average 2 point something, it's mostly older couples. Even if we 100% developed and grew every lot built overnight, every single property in the valley, we wouldn't pass 1,500 residents. And so, you know, that's still a lot of growth
Permanent.
percentage wise.
Permanent residents.
Permanent residents, or even just houses that are able to be built. And so it's not to say that won't change, but we're talking 40, 50 years maybe. There's still quite a few lots that get purchased and sold and not built on. So at 100% capacity, we're still a very small place. You know, I don't think we'd ever even pass, you know, the population of Yukon or other areas. Just geographically, we've got BLM National Forest and then a lot of county. And so yes, we are growing and we're trying to think ahead to some of that. But we still, we don't perceive that we'll ever be quite just geographically the size of some of these other places. So
You mentioned the gate, where is that at? What's the,
there's a gate, it's kind of like a big wooden arch gate down towards the right of the map there. There's,
It's a little black mark.
yeah,
Is
like a
that
little
what
black
that is?
line.
Okay.
It's basically just like a little entrance that goes towards some subdivisions. And that's another thing we have, because we don't have a roads crew, you know, every single subdivision within the city limits of Swan proper, those are privately maintained, every single you know. And so once it gets to the entrance of that subdivision, they contract privately to have those plowed or maintained otherwise, so.
It's in the city limits in the town.
Yeah, it's the darker color, and then you can see up here. That's all still in the county, because it's basically the overlaid area of the city limits. So
With regards to the quick claim for the road. In the 5 years I've been here, we have cleaned up our map extensively. And all county-owned roads that are inside city limits are deeded over to the city.
And that's fine, like I said,
has
it doesn't
nothing to
make
do
a
with the
difference
maintenance
either
stuff.
way.
It has to do with our tax
Gotcha.
and property records and trying to reduce. Drop those 850 records. It helps make things more manageable.
Yep.
So, but it doesn't have anything to do with.
I think it was just timing wise.
Probably.
It seemed very much correlated, right? So,
So is that shaded section off to the what, left side of the screen?
I think it's this, right?
No, off Austin's screen. Is that inside the city limits?
over here,
This was
for
right
this
there.
there,
No, further, right against the edge of your screen.
Yes, that is. part of
yeah,
the city
that's all
limits.
part of the city
No.
limits.
All
either
the
way,
way.
It's a crazy boundary over there.
yeah, we're a checkerboard map and
That section that comes across the fishing bridge.
Yeah, that's all city limits.
So that's all city.
Yeah.
yes,
Well, good, we can have a discussion about it. Some of the folks out there thinking it's private road,
Right.
not public access.
Yep.
But,
That answered a different question.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Lance?
Again, the deed didn't
Yeah, that-
have.
And that's
anything to
great.
do
It's great to
Talk about
clarify.
how
As far as the maintenance, the deed does help you in a way that now you're able to apply to the state and update your inventory of roads that are city roads and get some additional funds
That we can pass
to,
through.
that you can pass through to help with maintenance of it.
which we
And so
couldn't get.
Yeah, sure.
that's another thing that if it's not on our inventory, we don't get money for it. If it's not on your inventory, you don't get money for it. So that way you can get some more money to help maintain the road too.
Good to know.
As far as taking this road and going to an oiled road with a BSD treatment, the county is just not equipped to deal with some of the requirements that you wanted to do with, as far as the inspections and the timeframes and the legal side of signing a contract that we will have it done in X amount of time. We weren't able to fulfill those requirements that you had. If we can't fulfill the requirements that you had, we can't essentially agree to do the project. Cause we don't have that ability to do a tracking system like you asked for.
So on that, and I'll just speak to it. You know, you label them as requirements, but really, when we had that meeting with the council, it was more, we had kind of three main things that come to mind, just common sense things that we wanted to just at least have an understanding. One was just access. We have residents, county and city, that have asked us many times to say, if that road does get worked on, there is only one way in. And so how is that gonna be done? Are they gonna do half of the road at one time and then the other half, or are they gonna make a little, run around for access? Like, what are we gonna do there? Because there are people that live there, there's emergency services, fire. And so that was just, it wasn't a requirement, but I would hope everyone would agree that we just wanna understand how does that work? When we've got trucks and materials, things happening, is there 2 days that for the safety of everyone, we need to say, you're not gonna have access to your property for 2 days because of this part of the project? We just wanted to know what that was. So access, because it's a single access for residents, it's a safety concern and a question we're gonna be asked. 2 was material. When we had the very first meeting that October of 2023, it was kind of understood where he said, it seems to be a benefit to the county and the city that if we had a local crush approved, that would provide material for not just this project, but a lot of county projects that extend past us. And so we talked about that and we said, well, what's the pros and cons? The cons, some people complain about having a crush and they're loud and this and that. Dust, things like that. But the pros, there might be a cost savings. And we had agreed in that meeting that there should be a decent cost savings having that material produced locally as opposed to the trucks bringing it back and forth across Antelope Flats over and over. And so we both were kind of on the same page there. When I came to that January meeting, it was kind of said it would probably be a wash. And you explained the reasons why, that there's some initial costs in getting that up and going. The long-term savings are there because there's more material for other projects. And so we had still kind of just never gotten an exact, bid. And what Lance is relating to is saying, don't have the software things to be able to give a bid one way or the other. And we were saying, well, you have done things where you bring material across the valley and it takes X amount of hours to drive from, the pit to the site and back. What's the cost on fuel, labor, material? What would it be if we just wanted to know, is there a $20,000, $30,000 savings by doing it locally and it benefits having a crush? Or is there no benefit there and we just contract that? And then the third one was on the cost. We saw with, the length of the road and what it is, just ignorantly, and I worked for an excavation company for a couple of years, and so I have some understanding. But we looked at that and we thought maybe this is like a year project, maybe it's a 2-year project. And we were given that estimate that maybe it's about 3.5 years, and we're going, okay. If that's the case, it was said that a lot of the financial part of it needs to be contributed up front. And we were saying, if it's done over 3 years, is there a way for us to split those payments over 3 years? It's a substantial amount for city of Swan Valley. Even with our resort city tax, we're talking years of total city budget for one single road. Now, that being said, we think it's important. We want to contribute towards it. And so that was where we landed at that last council meeting, saying, we're willing to contribute financially towards this. And we just wanted to know really those basic 3 things.
So I think there is misunderstanding when I say 3 years,
Mhm.
because we talk about a 3-shot BST being over the course of 2 years.
Mhm.
And so there's 2 shots that go down 1 year, 1 shot in the second year.
Mhm.
To
Just like
do
what we
all,
did on Chapel.
yeah,
Yeah.
just what we did on Chapel. So in order to excavate all the material out and prepare it for that, the timing of that is something that I'm not able to define very well.
We get, I mean, we get that. So you build a house or you take your car to the shop and you get an estimate. And then there's the reality that something else was there. We get that. We just, if we're gonna answer to things like access, emergency service, but we just need to know some of that stuff in general. And so we honestly, we don't feel like we're trying to require anything above and beyond. But those 3 basic things I mentioned, those would be the priority, just to have a general understanding of what do we think that looks like? So that when, Jake Jacobson down the road comes to me for the 20th time and says, I would like to know, how's that gonna work? We can say, this is what we've been told. So,
And it was the construction project management and having a defined schedule that I'm not able to provide very well for you. If we went at it the same type of way that we did Chapel Road, I think that agreement worked with Chapel Road pretty well, and we did it as best our forces could do it, and we were trying to communicate through the project about what was going on.
Yep.
I just, with what was said in the meeting and the list of what I felt was requirements, I couldn't meet those requirements the way they were stated. And I didn't want to get in a position of saying we were gonna do this when I knew that I couldn't perform that. And so Stoltenberg Lane is a problem, has been a problem. We all agree it's a problem. If we can figure out a way to do it like we did on Chapel Road and say, let's come in, let's try to figure out a way to do this as a 3-shot BST. I think the estimate that I gave you is pretty close to what it's gonna cost to do it. If we have the material up there, we have to pay for the crush to happen. That paying for the crush to happen almost pretty close offsets the trucking cost of moving the material up there from the valley where we already have the material. So that's where the trucking cost versus paying for the crush. I don't know an exact figure, but right now I anticipate that they're pretty close to the same.
What is the cost?
The cost that I gave the city of Swan Valley for doing that was, I think, about $400,000.
yeah, it's a little bit higher with the most recent updates that you'd given.
And what does the city reasonably feel like they could contribute to that project?
I mean, reasonably, when you look at total percentage of budget, it's huge for us to even do 50%. We feel like we could do a majority. And because it's important enough and we've enacted that resort city tax specifically to be able to help support some of these projects like Road and Bridge. We don't want to wipe out not only the entire budget, but everything in one year and be left. The other thing that we don't know, the resort city tax, that's not a guarantee from here on out. That's something we have to reapply for about every 5 years or so, 3 to 5 years, I believe. And so that's something just long-term thinking. And, this has been a nationwide conversation in terms of budgets and projects and things, but we don't know. We don't have a guarantee like a property tax or, other types of taxes that are fairly consistent. And even with levies and things, they change pretty, insignificantly year to year. If we lose that resort city tax, it could mean that we have literally pretty much nothing. I think in total, we were probably getting about 20-30,000 a year total, influx to the city before we had that resort city tax. So if we looked at it that way, doing a project like this represents almost a decade of the entire city's funds. And I go, if you asked Idaho Falls to do a 1 mile improvement of road and it was gonna take them 10 years of total revenue, it'd probably be a pretty big deal. And so I know we're small potatoes, no pun intended, but that, on this though, I do know that the council, we've said that we would support a majority. And so we would love, to have some, collaboration and support from the county, whether there's some grants available that the county might know of. Even things like what you said with that quitclaim deed, I think it's 60-something thousand that we pass through 100% to the county to maintain the few roads that we have. And great, if there's another few thousand by this quickly, great. We just need to know that so we can do our part and then provide more. But if we are to be, taking over some of these things that are, a shared and county responsibility, we have to know those things to budget accordingly. We can't just pass through 100% of our state funding, and then be required to also do things outside of that. So as in short, we would love to contribute. And I think, from discussions we've had with the council, we're willing and prepared to vote on and sign off on a lion share, portion to support this project, because we do feel it's important. And that's been validated by fire district and sheriff's office.
Okay, so it sounds like,
Lance, Mayor, do you either know how many miles of dirt road, how many miles of paved road we have in Swan Valley?
I don't copy.
Paved road, I've done it before, just going off of like Onyx and Google Maps, but I mean, less than 10 miles. We have Chapel now, and that's what, was that a mile? Less?
I think we did a little over a mile.
So Chapel was up on the order. What's your, last time we talked, Old Burnwood Road. It's Palisades Creek jumped up. Palisades Creek Road, I think it's. But.
As
But,
far as the gravel to oil, yeah.
And one of the issues I have with this road is it is an island isolated road that isolates a whole bunch of homes. And it makes it really hard to do anything without isolating those homes. And from the fire response side, I'd never let that happen. Okay, fire commissioners should never have allowed that to be signed off on, so that you have one access to a bunch of high dollar homes and not a second way to get emergency vehicles in or people out if you need egress. And that needs to be seriously looked at in the planning and the zoning as the next step in whatever development takes place. There's gotta be a route through for that. And that's what puts the pressure on the Old Irwin Road and Palisades Creek, is any diversion on the highway for an accident shoves all the traffic around that dirt road which ups the numbers so that it comes up ahead of this little piece of road, because that piece of road gets a whole bunch more traffic when there's any kind of event that causes a diversion, which is the planning Austin's talking about, get together so that master plan can
Per
move
fire
forward.
code, every one of those houses should have sprinklers in them,
And that's what we've been talking about.
because there's over 30 lots and. you
Is it
exceed the one
CR2
access.
or something, but that's a recent conversation that's been spurred from not only this, but some of these other subdivision applications that have come through where, you know, we don't have, most of the places are up to snuff with fire suppression. And in fact, some of these actually have fire hydrants.
That's
So
good.
there's some
And
Swan
Swan
Springs,
hydrants actually work.
and some of those fire hydrants work. So
So,
you know, that's something
that's an
even-
improvement.
it's an
Yeah,
improvement,
yeah.
and that's actually been there, but
But
to your point, also, we've actually said. We want the fire district to review those subdivision applications from here on out,
some of those roads.
because some of them, they might require sprinklers
Right.
if they don't have
Through.
fire suppression, so.
Well, so moving forward, we need to see where it is on the schedule. And see if we can adjust it upward on the schedule.
I can add it onto there. We'll have to get a traffic count to add in there too. And I can bring that back. Right now, we're doing a lot of counts for BMPO. But we'll try to get counts up there as soon as we can and bring that back to the commissioners.
And it sounds like to me, I mean, the shared cost, that needs to be a collaborative approach, and I don't know what's happened in the past, but we can't have demands and denials, that's
No,
could go
we
on
did.
forever, we need to,
Probably need to join
talk
powers
about-
agreement like we have with City of Battle Falls for shared projects that we have.
And we want to, we just want to do it within what we really feasibly can. You know, I think that's the thing, if we had the budget and the taxes for some of this stuff, but we do want to contribute, and we see the value, and that's what it is. So we want to be good partners on this.
Well, we appreciate that, and I think, we're just starting into our budget season, and every year the legislature withdraws a portion of our ability to perform our required legislative duties by restricting the funds that we can get to accomplish those tasks.
Yep.
And then they take great credit for the fact that they cut our property taxes. But,
Yeah.
but. And I live up there, so.
Yep.
I drive these roads daily, at least twice. And it is important, and it's a great place to live, but Irwin and Swan Valley are stuck in the same boat as Ammon or Yukon and Iona. Because you were restricted by the legislature on how much you can do with the tax levies that you had in place when somebody arbitrarily passed a rule and said, oh, we're gonna hold you to this.
Yep.
And now you can't.
I was at 10
And-
hours of levy training last year and learned all that mess, so. it was-
So, you have an idea of the restrictions that we have, and because our county is a very conservative county and hadn't levied for a bunch of stuff when we could.
We didn't even have property taxes till a few years ago.
Yep. I know.
So,
I know. And so progress is painful and slow, but if we work together, we can get things done. So Lance, you'll get a traffic study done, and then we'll get it evaluated on the list to see
Yes.
when should we put a follow-up on the agenda for?
That's when they get the traffic study.
I'm
It's
just saying,
probably gonna
asking.
be a couple months. John, you get up there next week? Next week, okay. How about 2 weeks from now on the agenda, and we'll update that gravel total.
and we'd be happy to support. And again, on the other part of it is, we don't handle, manage, or know your budgets. And that being said, we want to contribute as much as we can. I can tell you that if there was a contribution for this project specifically, and it is it's an outlier, but if there was on this specifically, we wouldn't wince at, the little difference between whether it's local or hauled across or this or that, that's just trying to be responsible and represent constituents where every penny counts when we're as small as we are and trying to think long-term. And so I can tell you, you'd have our full support if there was any contribution from the county to have that be a collaborative project. You know, some of those details on when we pay this over the 3 years or when we do that's just stuff where we're trying to make sure our ducks are in a row. But if you guys were also contributing, that goes away because it alleviates a little bit of pressure for us where it's still a big project, but it's not a life altering, city altering project of did we make a mistake doing this? And I don't want that to be, because we need it. We need it for all the purposes that have been said. So
I think it's swans, ducks.
swans in a row, and there's swans in a row. Anyways, appreciate
Apparently
everyone's time.
ducks nest there and swans don't.
Yeah, and that's the other part too, is come, when you guys are doing some of the planning for stuff later on or whatever, please include us, even the stuff with the quit claim deed. You know, it's just knowing the communication and knowing the reasoning, that helps a lot. And we want to be good partners. And so if there's stuff that we can do to improve, please tell us, because we really sincerely want that. So,
I sent you an email about area of impact and times to get together, so if you'll just respond, we can start working on that.
That will
too.
help.
So,
yeah, that'd be
Get
great.
things in.
and we can address a lot of that in this, so, yeah.
There is a subdivision that's being proposed on Chap.
Pull it up on my
His email.
Yeah. That's a way back, I think.
Well, I know you
You
guys
wanna-
have some other stuff
Well, I
as
just,
well.
I
We
wanted,
do.
Let
That's
us. Jeff is this one.
well, Chapel Road was annexed.
Right.
GS at msbt law.com. Okay, thank you so much.
Well, Mayor, there is a potential subdivision along Chapel Road.
There is a potential.
And they asked me what they needed to dedicate to the county for Chapel Road, and well, that road has been annexed, the ground has been annexed, and so hopefully you're planning and zoning, whoever's looking at Chapel Road for dedication from the center line out what they need to do.
Okay.
That wasn't a call that I was gonna make for you, because
Yeah.
that's, okay, your jurisdiction road. And I told the engineers that, but just so you know,
At connector.
well, it was connect, yeah.
We need somebody to tell them what standards they need to make for that
The
road.
city
Mhm.
needs to come up with that standard, because the city is going to have jurisdiction over the road. Not necessarily maintenance, but jurisdiction. You guys get to say what happens to that.
And that's that. If you
Okay.
even had recommendations on that sort
Okay,
of stuff,
so
that's,
that's, I think it's important unless we need to leave or get out of here or something, but let's you and I talk about that, because I think the whole. The way I read it, anyway, we still have jurisdiction over it, but what I don't wanna do is have us approve something that ends up not,
Is a lower
that's another
standard.
one of these. And
Yeah.
so if we need to
The same
pass on
standard or
a
better.
review fee to your
That
department,
would be fine.
that's what we're doing with the fire district.
Yeah.
We're gonna, in the coming months, enact like a review fee. And we could do something similar. So we can get hold of it and see how that works best.
Okay.
But,
okay,
okay, thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
thank you.
Going to the recreation district. Or did you want to sign a piece of paper?
Well, this is the agreement. This is a clean version that's been printed out. It has all the changes that we've talked about. It's gone through legal counsel, at least the county's legal counsel. I don't know if, Lance. Yeah, I don't know if Lance Schuster has gone through it. I emailed it to him.
I have, I've
yesterday.
reviewed it.
Are we good with that?
I think we're good to go. I mean. We want to collaborate too, to use those words. So. We, this is a path forward that I think works for everybody.
So did you
Not a
have
road
45
plan?
minutes for us to just sign this?
Well, I wasn't sure if there's any questions or.
Sorry.
I wasn't either. Um,
But we're prepared to sign.
and he drove for the afterwards,
And we've got trucks ready to roll too. I wasn't sure if.
so.
So we did talk about that yesterday, and what we said yesterday was if the commissioners sign this agreement and you guys sign the agreement, I think the road is in a position that you could, the road close can be taken down and the maintenance from Progressive starts at that point. I think the road is in a condition right now that most of it is been taken care of by county forces to do the repairs of the big dip.
Okay.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the road maintenance and restoration agreement entered into between Bonneville County and Progressive Irrigation District.
And Bateman Brothers,
And,
too.
well, that's not,
There's a third signature on the page, the last
okay,
page.
and Bateman Brothers, trouble with that. On the 7th day of March.
May.
Second day of May. Thank Goodness. it's
I
May.
was sitting there for a minute, I'm like.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye.
This is regarding. Thanks for your patience in working through this with us, Progressive, we appreciate it, and Bateman and Lance, everyone else involved, I know you're involved. Tumor.
Be done before we can start all, what needs to be done to it. Now
I-
that we can
I
start.
think right now you can start hauling it. I think it's in a position to start.
Just
But we'll be keeping an eye out and.
You know, when you
get
start
with
seeing
you
one
if
of
we see
these
something
grow,
going on.
fill it back in.
Right.
Just call us, let us know.
It's nice to get it at speed.
I think what would be helpful too, if the truck drivers. Or whoever's supervising them kind of kept an eye, because I think if we would have had any feedback earlier on this road, we might not have had such a problem either. You know, it seems like the truck drivers were just doing their job, trucking. And not recognizing that it could impact their job to see some of the problems on the road, so.
And just a friendly notice, we have a big break ordinance in the county. That hasn't been posted because it hasn't been an area that would be an issue. Residents all the way down that road, they shouldn't be hitting speeds using Jake brakes anyway. But if you let the drivers know, they probably won't. Usually drivers are responsible, not the ones that haul stuff from Jacksonville past my house. I can't remember. But most roads down here are responsible.
Who's gonna sign this for Bateman and who's gonna sign?
I'll sign it for Progressive. We don't have somebody from Bateman here. I can get somebody here for it. Yeah, we can get somebody over here from Bateman to sign.
They just need to come in here and sign, they don't need to be right in the meeting. I can remember the mess I made, I was going in the title. Lance.
Sorry.
I tried to put the name and title there and I made a mess of it, so I'm sorry.
The county will be
I apologize.
removing the road close for that.
Just trying to be helpful and I
She was
just.
trying to be helpful tonight.
I'm not gonna print it.
Somebody from Basin, you can then sign it.
Somebody with. Not one of the truck drivers.
Yeah, it's the 7th.
Well, never know.
Lance will tell you.
Hey,
Okay,
sorry, I did not expect Swan Valley to take.
no, that's all
quite
right.
as long. He's usually very succinct in meetings I've been in with him. So,
Happy hauling.
No, that's good, and we'll look forward to working with the county on the road and getting that dirt gravel hauled off of the south fork.
yeah. So no sledding hill this winter?
I hope not, I hope it's gone.
Have you decided what you're doing with the
Kelly
dirt
Canyon
yet?
about a contract for that?
Yeah, I don't know the details there.
Yeah, once you come up with a plan for where you're moving the dirt, just let us know so we can make sure we don't run into this problem again. So if it's going somewhere else than down 105.
Is South Fork also known as Manwaring? Is that the one you're referring to?
That's a youth prison.
It's not illegal.
Yeah.
You know, if you're looking for a place for all that rock, there's, Forest Service needs some blowout program. You can put everything that's there. Really,
Yeah, just keep us posted.
Okay,
parking lot, blah, blah, blah.
Project on goes,
Yeah.
you know how to get a hold of me, so
all right, thank you.
all of you,
Hey.
unfortunately.
Thank you very much.
Sorry you had to wait.
So you're gonna reinstate the permit. The next item is to review and sign the right of way or the contract for Horrocks Engineering on the right of way. This is the before and after appraisal for the one that's under eminent domain.
Didn't have-
Those are, those are the. Actually, put the-
Yeah, and I'm just making this little.
So this was based on the appraisal that we had the commissioners pick. It was the Mr. Free, and then the other fees on there are for Horrocks Engineering and the right of way documentation preparation.
For,
This is for parcel 9. It's the parcel that's under eminent domain.
okay.
This is the one requested by legal counsel to go this direction.
It's about the First Street Eleven.
Yes,
So is this a step in the process or does this finish it?
this starts that process. It
Do
doesn't
we need a
finish
motion or
it.
do we just need to sign?
We just, well,
John,
probably want to motion to sign the contract with, or
Okay.
Contract.
I'll make a motion to sign the right-of-way acquisition scope of work contract with Borox Engineering regarding parcel ID number RP 02N38E158833.
Second that. All in favor? Aye.
Okay, the next one is a notice of public hearing for the purpose of the road validation. Be held June 11th, 2025. This is for that. Road number 105. There's a sketch here along with it. If you're
About
not familiar
150.
where it is, it's the unimproved road number 105.
This is the one where the farmer needed access, so we put a gate on
And
and
the
locked.
property owner locked the gate put there by somebody else and left abandoned. You guys good with this? Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
These maps don't do much for me as far
Oh,
as
this is out.
locating anything.
Highway 26,
Yeah.
just short of,
The rest area, south
yeah,
of the
just
rest area.
past the rest area. That's the farm that actually has access to that little piece, right? The one across the street. That road across the street goes back and then there's that
Yeah.
road that goes down. I wish somebody died and leave that to me. I love that piece of dirt down there on the river.
You just need to sign that when you need them.
Right. It's right off the highway. Is it just right off? Can't see it from the highway. Not that far. But.
So we're doing the road validation, get the data, somebody thinks they,
Being on the.
But it did.
It needs to be on the agenda if they're gonna make a decision on it. We can talk about it, but they can't make a decision today.
Even though it's already been approved, those funds have been approved.
The funds have been approved, the budget, but it hasn't been- We still think we wanna.
Well, we didn't.
tell
Just
them
the
that
notice
That's what
of
we're.
Notice of a public hearing to do the
And
validation.
again, they probably need to make a decision based on.
Windmill company was putting in the window contractor installing the window at the gate, so glad the construction site. Well, no, it didn't remove the
Spend some
gate.
money to do that, or we just say it's in the budget.
Oh,
for this
the
business.
guy said
a
you were there.
contractor put it there
Okay, yeah,
to be an.
it was a contractor, not the tower. So.
But how are you gonna figure
The
that
tower
out?
was
without
like,
expending
take the gate down, shouldn't be there.
Yeah, that is probably.
Then you gotta have to put a gate up, and that would have been fun.
Conversation, so we'd like to see-
Yeah, the nice guys. It's to his property down there. So what else you got?
I don't think we have any other action.
Does Taylor Meadows Division 1 first amended final plat?
Next week.
That was,
Oh, it's just early, advance
next week.
warning.
oh, look
Yeah.
at that. That's
You
nice
said
to
you
be done
wanted it
early.
5 days prior. So
Let's see if Idaho Falls got for us.
Wade, do you have anything for us?
No, I don't have any.
Are you sure? Saw they hauled
What are
a
you thinking?
big monster generator in.
Oh, for the, yeah, there, is that for the peaking plant?
Yeah, for the peaking.
I have a real problem with that name. It makes me think of China every time. It's in China.
No, I don't-
Tesla says if you put it in the ground, you can take it out anywhere,
Whatever.
so.
I don't have anything for you folks, just hear this and see if I can help.
That would have been fun to watch him
You could annex
swing
Swan
that
Valley.
into place.
Do you have any update on the,
Red Barn?
not to, Red Barn? Not to bring up something controversial, I just had. Our corn maze operators have been asking me, do you know if they're gonna be able to open this year? Because if not, we need to plan for the influx of people that usually go to the Red Barn and.
Yes, I can. The mediation agreement is going to the city council. this Thursday. We did come to an agreement on April, it was 2 weeks ago, whatever the date was that we went to mediation. So, that will be, yes, that'll be heard, and whether the city council, we're foreseeing that they'll uphold the agreement. What the agreement states, there's a couple of things. One is that my department would bring back and the conditional use permit and the variance is granted to it. We are in support of that as staff. They also have requested that we review their site plan and permit within 5 business days, which we've done. The other side of the agreement is that when he will dedicate the right of way and dedicate the easement along Rolling Dead. And when we widen Rolling Dead, we have to give him 6 months notice that we are doing that and that he is on the land to approve his side of Rolling Dead. Which I think came to like 179,000, I think is what it came to. So that's the agreement that's going to city council. Will they be open in the fall? I'm foreseeing that. But unless there's, we haven't even gone through inspections on the property, so.
Right.
So if inspections pass, I'm foreseeing, yes, that they'll be open this fall. So.
It's good to know, thank you.
As a concerned citizen of Idaho Falls, not as county commissioner, is he still going to be allowed to park across Rolling Dead?
Well, he's rent space from the zoo.
So
Whatever, that just seems so
Well, they have a
dangerous.
cross-
the request, so part of the conditional use permit is that he could use the property to the west of McNeil. as well as we call it the elk pasture, which is the property by the zoo.
Yeah,
However, the zoo is improving that next year. They were planning to do it this year, but they.
Lion got in the way.
Yeah, this one, because of this agreement, the park has agreed to stay, let them use it again this year. But in future, that'll be fenced off because they're looking to put elk there and others. I don't know exactly what the zoo's doing.
Bison, we should have bison there.
Yeah,
Lots.
so then they would have to, their off-site parking has to take place on the west on the.
yeah, okay, that's much better. That parking. We went there once with kids and it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, was that before they put the crosswalk in?
That must have been, there was
That doesn't
nothing there.
And that's the whole reason that we're pushing for that widening. One, it's on our access management plan through BMPO. I mean, that's why Rolling Neck
Right.
needs to be widened and why we're pushing so hard on that. Yeah, it's just the safety issue. As you guys know, the streets.
Well, thanks. Sorry to bring up the
No,
thorn
no.
on your side. I was just, I've got a lot of questions about that,
As time
so.
goes on, I twitch less.
Is there a mini metropolitan business planning organization? The Swan Valley would fit in a mini metropolitan. place.
And did the property owners as well as the property operator sign off on this agreement?
So that's a good question. The property owners are actually listed as, Preston and Katie Walker, who are
Right.
his son and daughter-in-law. We were reassured from his legal counsel that he can sign for them, and so they inevitably have signed because he signed it. The property owner on McNeil for the parking agreement, again, an agreement has been reached between Mr. Walker and the owner of that property as well.
All right, well,
The Secretary of State's grandparents.
maybe.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Wade.
So that, you guys put together an ag tourism zone, right? Which Bonneville County does not have, right?
Do we need one?
Well,
It's
it was suggested that that would actually accommodate the fair and all the stuff at the fairgrounds
Hmm,
and
Yeah,
not
that's
be
right.
fudging on the sides of lines, but that's why I wanted to ask this question with the two of you here,
Yeah,
because
so how we approach, maybe to answer that question, Commissioner Walker, however you folks choose to, I mean, under your jurisdiction. What we did is the ag tourism, we have the zoning district, which is manufacturing, and the ag tourism is a conditional use in that zone.
okay, so what is Sandy Downs? Because this is relative to a joint project with the city and the county at
Yeah.
Sandy Downs that is on both sides of the city line.
I don't know what the zoning is.
And you know what
I've looked at
Sandy
it
Downs
before.
zoning is?
I couldn't tell you right now.
Yeah, I'd have to do some
Okay,
research.
don't tell me.
The
right.
fairground is ag though.
Well, I know it was when
Yeah.
we started this
That's what
conversation
it seems
4
like. they
years
were
ago.
saying.
And I thought it was changing to something that worked for,
Well, you were the one who said it, John.
well,
Change of
no,
flow.
yes. And that was,
It is public. Does that seem right, Wade?
Yeah.
That's what the map shows that is public, so
what does that mean?
we've talked about that before,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
the city has a public zone for all their city-owned property that has different regulations and
Government buildings,
allows for.
interest buildings.
Well, this is specific to a joint campground venture between the city and the county. That would force
Which a public zone would probably. be a
marriage
good
and
thing for
mending. Okay, well, so we need to, because
We've talked about that
yes,
before, we just
didn't
haven't done
do
it yet.
anything on it, and grants are, you know how funny grants are. file the application and they say yes, and you get the money and you have to spend it, and so. So, okay.
Yeah.
Anything else, gentlemen?
Lance and David, where are we at with bridges and
33rd South is scheduled for pavement on Monday. If they get the waterproofing done, right now their waterproofing machine is.
Temperatures are up.
No, the waterproofing
Oh.
machine shouldn't need the temperatures up, but it needs to be functional. And right now it's broke. So 129th is due to be paved on the 16th, again, if the waterproofing machine
You
works.
can't go get a bunch of cans of spray waterproofing from Coleman and.
I don't know.
Uh,
They're waterproofing the contract, the concrete, the voided slabs, they have to put a waterproofing down before they put stuff on top.
Okay,
That way it will hopefully hold up for at least a 50-year lifespan. 49th South, they are due to deliver the voided slabs this Friday.
oh,
And
good.
install it. And then they will start working on the other portions to get to where they need waterproofing and paving.
and then what about the dust abatement on that?
That's.
65.
That's the dust.
So they,
Monday
is
start that
gonna-
plans.
Okay,
we have graded that road at least 4 times this spring.
The dust abatement helps reduce doesn't it, washboarding?
It will help reduce it, yeah,
Couple of weeks.
yeah,
not very long.
Not that much traffic.
not with that much traffic.
No.
Okay,
Thank you.